Hello there. Before we begin, just a quick note. This interview and the others in this series were never initially meant to be released as full videos. I was sort of gathering sound bites for an upcoming, more polished video where the idea was to gather as many different voices from players, coaches, tournament organisers and creators. And after filming a few, what I realised was that the interviews in full were too good not to just release in their entirety. So there's a little bit of light editing, and what you might notice is that in these first few, there's not quite as good a presentation style from myself. That's just because I wasn't really conceiving them to be released in this way. But post-edit Jerry is going to come in with some voiceovers to kind of tie it together at different points. So with that out of the way, I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the second interview in this series, this time with THiiXY, or Luke. From humble beginnings making content during the finals pre-release with a box over his head, he was one of the first to even attempt to create a finals competitive scene, and it's fair to say that at some points early on he even carried the esport on his back. He's evolved from being just a content creator to a tournament organiser, caster, producer, stage host, and has now worked with Embark to design and deliver both the Grand Majors. His journey epitomises the grassroots connection that the finals esports has been built from. With TGM26's online series just about to get up and running, and much of its format penned by Luke himself, I talked with THiiXY, hoping to get his unique perspective on topics such as cashout, format design, and the finals competitive ecosystem. So, first of all, would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, my name's Luke, also known as THiiXY. I am currently a contractor at Embark, helping out with the esports side of things. Basically, I oversee some of the things with the formatting and kind of the bridge between the competitive scene to the Embark side from a corporate standpoint. I was also behind the Grand Major 2025 and, very gratefully behind the Grand Major 2026 as well. So that basically comes with a lot of things from, planning how we get there, the formatting, of course, which is what we'll talk about today. And obviously as well, the trying to, hear the needs from four constraints, I call it. So we have the needs from the developers, which is one constraint, the needs from the viewership side, which is another constraint. The third constraint is the needs from the, organizers or the people that run it. And then, of course, the most important one of the most important ones is the need from the players as well.
I love how organized that mindset is. You've had a lot of time to think about all of these constraints, and that's interesting. Cool.
I think the funny word is I've learned what those constraints are from a very intimate level.
So now you've organized it in your mind.
Yeah.
And great.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, some warm-up questions. I'm just going to quickly wind my blind down because this lighting is awful. So, ignoring individual class balance, like weapons and gadgets, do you think that Cashout is a balanced game mode?
Yeah, I love this question. This is a question that I think has been kind of pinned for a very long time since the final started. And obviously I was here since the alpha, so I'd really kind of, heard this statement come up now and then, like, is it balanced or not? I think that the game mode of Cashout is balanced. However, because people raise their pitchforks and be like, wait, I think the thing that comes about the actual Cashout game mode is the fact that you as a team can play the game perfectly fine. You guys can play everything, do everything right. It's not you guys as a team that is the factor here. My point with and where the lines get blurred with people saying that Cashout is or isn't balanced is the fact that it's actually another team's actions that can potentially be the wrong action that will affect you doing the things that are correct. So from a casual player standpoint, I believe that the mode is balanced, but then it determines like who is playing within that mode. From an esports balance, right? If we talk about from like a competitive side balance, I don't really like using the word esports for it, but I think that Cashout is not balanced match to match. I think that it's balanced format to format. And I think that that's a very deliberate design choice that we wanted to do for the Grand Major 2026, is that we want to make the finals its own game.
Right. Yeah. Okay. We'll get into that, definitely, because the way the format affects Cashout is a big focus of this video. This is an interesting one. In your experience playing and watching the finals esports, do you have a format that you've enjoyed the most? And I laugh because, of course, you've been behind a few of these. And what made it good, or what will make it good? Perhaps is another way of framing this. If you're thinking forward, that is.
Yeah, no, I think that I'm very excited to see how the promotion format plays out because, as I said at the start of this talk, right, there's 4 constraints that I have to work with, and I'm being stretched in each one. And the promotion format meets the needs of all 4 of those constraints and finds a middle ground. I think that, of course, if you understand the scene deeply and you understand how the format works, you read online about this is how the format works, point systems, etc. I think that they're all fun, right? Every organizer, when they do events for the finals, they're all fun. I think that it's mainly the case of how does the narrative play out, right? That's, for me, it's more important in seeing, okay, great, this format may be fun, but how does, the start, middle, and end look from a perspective of a viewer? That's what I look at, right? I'm not a player in this. So it's quite a dodged answer, I guess, but I strongly stand by and believe that the promotion and the throne format this year are something that I'm very excited to look and see.
I would agree. I'm looking forward to seeing them. I'm tempted to ask a kind of follow-up question, which is you've talked a lot about the and go a little bit off script here. You've talked a lot about the 4 constraints that you sort of work within. When you look at tournaments such as Apes Classics, such as PHL, their aims are very different to those of the official circuit in that they are more about providing a platform for long-form competitive gameplay. Yeah. Does that mean that you look at the way they structure their tournaments through a different lens with different kind of criteria when you come to judge it?
Yeah, exactly. I think that, you have to, when you work in, let's say, a sense where you have the community side and the official side, you always have to see what the other side is doing, right? You always have to see, maybe this year they're doing an innovation with the new format, like for example Pro Hubs this year and Apes Classics, they're trying new things. And I think that the biggest aspect that I've enjoyed seeing the most is that more people are accepting that Cash Out is a part of the finals and it should be a part of the competitive scene. I think that it's great that Ape Squad kind of started shifting away from just doing the 3v3s to then trying to incorporate Cash Out in some way, if that's their own way. And that's something I think that, I look towards and say, okay, how did that play out, right? And obviously, I have a very particular take in terms of point systems, cash outs in particular. But yeah, of course, you should always look and see what the other person's doing. Because if you don't, when you, let's say, do official things, you're blindsided, right? You don't know what actually works if you're not looking at other people's, what they're doing and stuff like that. So it's very important.
Great. Let's delve in a little bit on those kind of point systems questions then. So these are where we get into the nitty gritty. So I don't know if you have a different term for this, but I've kind of invented my own one, which is granulated cashout. So the kind of version of the game that exists within a lot of these league-based competitions where you have different points for first, second, third, or fourth quite often. So for instance, in Apes Classics, they've assigned 10 points to first place, 8 points to second place, and then a bit of a steeper drop off to third, 4 points, and then 2 points for fourth. So let's delve into that a little bit. So yeah, do you think that there's, first of all, any additional level of skill expression in that version of the game compared to a normal cash out game where it only matters that you get first or second?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that I have this take that I had since the Grand Major 2025 last year, and obviously the format last year was not simplistic. It was very complex, but as leading up to before you got towards the end phase on the last day, it was no point systems at all, right? It was all elimination based or advancement based focused systems. And the reason why we had done this kind of very rough test, I guess, last year is that I believe that, and I'm going to use your terminology because I love granulated cash out, actually. I believe that granulated cash out adds skill at gaming the point system. The promotion format, for example, it adds skill at actually playing cash out when it matters in the moment, right? Because if you think about it, there's 2 perspectives of this again when I talk about the constraints. The first perspective is for the players, sure, having a point system, it does create a meta game about points, not about cash out. The problem is that metagame is an invisible metagame, right? So unless you make it very abundantly clear, like the talent, the production, the broadcast, unless you make it very clear that this is happening, from a viewership perspective, they don't actually really care that much or are not super invested into it because it takes a lot of brain power to kind of like associate those things. And I think
it's already a very complex game at its core, and you've added this invisible layer on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's my whole point, right? And I think that it's better to spend that time that you would spend talking about the points, talking about the points of the match, right? Like, oh, this player did well, or is this player dropping off, or how does this team do matched up against another team? And I think that obviously we talk about kings making, right? Is what I call it, kings making, and griefing out another team. But to me, and this actually happened when I watched an Apex Legends match, but I don't see the entertainment value or fun when a team needs to get third place to qualify, right? It doesn't make sense because in the finals, it's first and second that qualifies. But if a team needs to at least get third because of the point systems to like qualify to the next stage or whatever, there isn't that entertainment aspect or value that you're in the edge of your seat for, in my opinion.
Yeah. So is there a kind of core belief that actually this is a leading question. I need to think of how to phrase this. Do you think that cash out should only ideally be used as it's intended in game, where you have essentially it functions as a knockout?
Yeah, I think that when you think about what a viewer. Okay, let's take it from this angle. Let's talk about other esports, right?
Okay.
The problem that I think that's happening in the finals esports right now is that people are trying to box the finals competitive into a format that exists and works in another game, right? Apex has it's like 20 teams per match. The finals has 4. So the BR points in Apex Legends can work because there's a big variance that kind of dilutes across the whole wide field of teams. But in the finals, because there's only 4 teams in a cash out match, that big variance, oh, my camera froze, that big variance doesn't dilute, right? It actually, it does the opposite. It concentrates. So what this means is that one bad lobby, it can, I guess, it can swing your standings more than your actual skill does, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let me raise a point to this, right? If you go to, I think it's Ape Squad, I don't know if I have it on here, but if you go to Ape Squad Classics leaderboards right now, and you take a look at the NA leaderboards, you'll see in there that there are 3 teams in Ape Squad that missed by 1 point. And I think that yes, yeah, go. Yeah, I'll show you quick.
I'll take your word for it, but I can always throw it up in the video if I end up using this point. But
if you go from 15th to 19th, Fade had 69 points. He's Reaching had 69 points. And then Nessionos had 68, Sunken 68, Tempo 68. Right? So that's all a 1 point variance difference in terms of that thing.
Yeah.
So, we talk about, kings making, or we talk about, how that situation presents itself. And, over a long time of playing cash out games, let's say eight cash out games over a long time, that difference from being third or fourth could be the difference, of course, to you not qualifying.
Yeah. And in reality, the difference between third or fourth doesn't matter in cash out.
Yes.
Right? It's
exactly.
functionally useless. So you're right. Those kind of lower point cases are a big deal. I've never thought about it like that. That's why I've never looked at the kind of bottom end of things. But it creates bigger problems at the top as well. But yeah.
Yes.
Because you get a different style of gameplay when you're not guaranteeing yourself progression, but you're trying to fight for first instead.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's a whole other thing. And that's kind of when I was asking about the skill expression. Sometimes there are actually benefits to that kind of granulated cash out where you have a game that's already wrapped up in paper. You know who's going to come first, second. You know who's going to come third, fourth. It's just the order of those twos. And so the battle for first does actually provide a bit more entertainment value and skill expression. It suddenly becomes about maybe a bit of a kill race towards the end between first and second.
Yes.
But or being able to kind of manipulate the objectives so that you finish above your opponents, whatever way it might be. But that seems to be the kind of the silver lining to me of a system that is more fundamentally flawed.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense, and that's why I would never say that you shouldn't ever be able to run, like, let's say the difference between a point system format or an elimination based format that I obviously had for the Grand Major this year.
Yeah.
My only concerns, of course, and this is what again, and this is not to bash the people that did Apes Classics, of course. I think they ran the event so well, and I love the fact that they're innovating in that sense. But we saw that. I reached out to you after it happened, and I said, there are, in my opinion, there are downsides of point systems, but they can be entertaining to watch, right? In the EU one, all the teams were tied in points, right? That was really fun to watch, right? And then you go into the last cash out. But for the NA one, the problem is sure, even though one of the advantages is that first can have more value in that sense, that's why I raised the bottom end of it, right? In the bottom end, you also have to think about, fourth, third, second, first. What really is the difference? Because in the finals law, I guess, or the finals, third and fourth is an elimination done.
Yeah.
Right? You're eliminated, right? So, that's also something to think about that I think that people are trying to solve. And like I said, I like the fact that Pro Hubs and Ape Squad, for example, are trying to come to that conclusion, and that each step they're making progress.
I would have liked to see I think the cash out league portion of Apes Classics was very well done. Besides the fact that it used granulated, I would have loved to see them just assign 3 points to winners and 0 points to losers, and then maybe have like a tiebreaker down the line. You could use like total cash earned as like your goal difference, if you will.
Okay.
But otherwise, I think that the cut element of it was really innovative and quite cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I really like that. Week on week, there were stakes for this cash out league. I like the fact that they used 3v3 almost exclusively in the bracket in some senses, because I think it's very difficult to work cash out into a bracket. We've done it at PHL, and we've done it in the Grand Major in the past, but it can be very fiddly, and you always run the risk of there being like elimination cash outs along the way, which I think is a bit of a bad word amongst the pros. People want to avoid that if possible. The real issue I had was trying to instill a point system to cash out in the very end of the tournament, which then resulted in an elimination cash out. Right? If you're going to have that point system, I think a system like the Throne system or like the Grand Major system, TGM25, where the cash out is never the crucial element, there's always the movement to 3v3 afterwards, and you're not eliminated from the game as a result of a cash out, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And you think about it from an entertainment perspective as well, right? Like, again, I always tell you, I always have to think about the viewer or the production or the player or, the scheduling, et cetera, and, the way I see it from the viewer side is that like the league was really fun, and I like the fact that the eliminations that happened each week put stakes on each broadcast. I think that's the best innovation I've seen of recent times with like communities running the formats. I think it was so good, and they should do that next time as well. But like when you go towards those later stages, like I said, when they clearly decided that 48 teams down to 16 then had to change it up a bit, right? It's kind of like the points are happening on a spreadsheet. From the viewer side, they don't really see that, but the structure that you have with elimination-based formats happen on the broadcast, right? You see then and there who gets eliminated and who doesn't. And as we saw, what is the downsides of that, right? And the game 3 in NA was the proof. We saw it on the broadcast. The math made it meaningless. And if just in case people are wondering what happened, there was a certain point in game 3 of the NA side for Ape Squad Classics where 2 teams, it was Retwist and Envy, were guaranteed to be qualified through. And then the other 2 teams, unfortunately, didn't have enough points to even make second place. So, when that happens, right, it's like, okay, well, what are we really watching here? And even the talent said, right, I guess we're just going to watch them have fun. And it's like, sure, that's cool. But like, do you really want to risk those things to have fun at that moment in like the last championship stage? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
designing a dead rubber into a grand final felt like the biggest flaw of that system to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. I think we've kind of gone through all of my cash out questions by a weird route, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll ask one of them and see if I can get a short answer out of you. What would you say to the idea that we should only have 2 acceptable results from any cash out game in comp, which is a win or loss?
Yeah, I like this. I think that perspective does depend on the format. So, for example, every cash out in the promotion has a clear structural loop, right? You have 2 teams advance, 2 don't. Super simple. That's the headline. The placement, I guess, only stops mattering once you're in, I guess, the top 2, because of it's basically how it's ranked. It's the ranked system. It's a ranked format. So, you know, I guess you could say that within the 3rd and 4th, there is a seeding advantage and things like that. But I don't really believe in the tale of, oh, first gets a better seeding advantage over second. I feel that's more of a cheaper excuse for when you're running a certain format, right? Which is why I like in the finals that it is proceed or eliminated. It's very simple.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the way that a lot of the finer details in the promotion format throughout the major and the qualifications for the major, the seeding is often sourced from the previous round, right? It's sourced from the Swiss. It doesn't look at the cash out games in detail.
No, yeah, exactly. So you are this obviously depends on the stage you're at, because again there are some time sacrifices we had to make. But yes, typically you will be seeded based on how you did during the Swiss, which means that you shouldn't have a bad seed going into the match if you've a very, very good team. There's an upper bracket and a lower bracket, etc. And when the matches advance, you are seeded based on your previous match's performance. So let's say you got 3rd in your cash out match in round 2. That's the advantage for you when we snake seed into the future rolling and cycling.
Cool.
Snake seeds, yeah.
Okay, I've got questions specifically for you. And you've already answered half of them. One of them was what things were at the forefront of your mind when designing the TGM26 format as a whole. And you've talked already a lot about the restrictions, but is there anything else you think about those? What was really at the front of your mind?
Yeah, I mean, me saying like I have those 4 restrictions. I always talk about it all the time. That's obviously one element to it. I think that when we talk about the Grand Major format, you have to focus in on making sure that all of them are as equally as important as each other, right? You don't want to, let's say, reduce the player's experience just for the benefit of the production. You don't want to reduce the production's experience just for the benefit of, I guess, the players, right? Like you have to be like super equal to them to some degree. Maybe lean a little bit more in one direction, right? I think players are the most important factor out of all of them. But you have to make sure that when you make a decision, it's not fully one-sided. Obviously we would love to do, just go along the side of the viewer experience and then, maybe have the players play elimination cash outs only, right? That will be fun, for example. But that's a technical, yeah, but that's a technical example, right? That I'm trying to show you here is like, yeah, sure, we could go down this path, but what do you lose from it? Or people will raise to me over a long time. They'll say, okay, well, why don't we do the Apex Legends format? Or why don't we do this format? Or why don't we do this? But then I'm like, sure, that sounds fun. And I think that's a great idea. But then you have to think about the scheduling time, the production time. How much does all of this cost? Will the viewers find it engaging and interesting over time? So it's not necessarily about trying to just jump in the deep end of one idea and focus in on it. It's about trying to make sure that we create an experience that is balanced as we can with all the aspects. And I think that this year should hopefully be the most balanced, year for all the constraints I work within.
Great.
We then took a look at PHL and an interesting and experimental new cash out format that's going to be showing up during the last chance qualifiers.
There is a point during the format. I'm just going to have to explain it. There is a point during I think it might be the last chance qualifier that it is, where they are going to be doing 2 back-to-back cash outs using the cumulative cash tallies from both games as the final rankings. which is fundamentally similar to having that kind of points system that you had in the Apes game, but because it's only over 2 games, you don't run the risk of a true dead rubber in the second game.
Yes.
What you might have is results decided 1 box into the second game, for instance, or like some of the results. But because it's going to be heat of the moment, there's quite a lot of moving parts. They'll probably have cash tallies somehow displayed on screen that add up during the second game, to sort of, make sure that everyone knows what's going on in the grand scheme of things. This seems like an example of completely warping the game mode, obviously, but introducing an extra layer of kind of hype and novelty that is very maybe not viewer friendly unless it's presented really, really well, but exciting for a viewer, and also quite strange and new for a competitive player. Yeah. So that's a lot of things. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this sounds very promising. I think that, this is what the beauty of being able to run, like your own events and stuff is, right? Like the fact that they can go and jump in and experiment on this stuff, I think is going to be really good. Obviously, we'd have to see it play out first, but I do have high hopes for the community finding what works for the community, right? I think that there will always be a different perception from official and community, because official has very specific things that, I told about. I keep saying this is annoying, but the constraints, right? Developer side, player side, production side, right? Those things are very different in terms of how we view like perspectives, right? How do we target making a fun event? And you have to realize that when you look at Pro Hubs or Ape Squad, they have to run an event over a long period of time. So in a way, you have to drag it out. You don't get the benefits of the Grand Major being over 3 days, right? You don't get the benefits of the short burst and circuits. So whatever the community does, I mean, the community is so good at always being able to find something, innovative or find something different just to try it out. And I like the fact that people are not scared to just stick in a box and like, oh no, we should only do this because it was the safest thing. I think that taking the risks and the chances in this is going to be really fun to see how it plays out.
That's cool. That's a really good perspective. I feel like I'm definitely going to use that bit there, because I have been very rigid in my sort of scripting for this and saying I think there are some sort of fundamental principles that we probably shouldn't break. But actually, we're going to be
the difference.
The kind of headline of this video is that we're going to be wrangling with format design for ages. And so why not let people be inventive is a cool kind of perspective on it.
I think a really nice way to kind of clarify it would be that the community will always be able to have the freedom to wrangle with whatever format they want. And I think that's the fun of it. I think that for the side of the official, we do want to put ourselves in towards a very structured kind of, this is how we want the competition to be.
Yeah.
Which is why, we've moved towards doing a format that is the game. One of the biggest strengths of the promotion format this year is the fact that a viewer can watch the promotion format and then load up the game, click play ranked, and it is the exact same thing that they watched. And I think that that's super crucial.
Yeah. Great. I would love, on the note of like community being able to wrangle with these things, it would be awesome to see those tools in game to be able to adjust spawn timers, cash tallies, all the random bits and pieces that,
It'll be so fun.
That would be great for custom games. And like, obviously the step beyond that is like a whole kind of sandbox mode where you can get people creating, their own limited time event type stuff, mess with gravity, it's obviously like that's an insane task for a smaller dev team, but
yes,
but yeah,
I think that you like the days of the Black Ops like custom lobbies where you could change the sprint speed, change like the crosshair spread, have unlimited ammo, like those things there are something that I would love to see in the finals in the next like 2 years. I think that it will just make the community so much stronger and the games and the events so much more fun.
For
like
casual content as well, it's like a massive deal to have that kind of thing. Yeah,
like the golf cash out, right? Remember that the golf cash out tournament? That was so fun to like watch that, and like those things are what get birthed and can kind of grow from just like a simple update or change. So yeah.
I have one question that's actually more directed to you from a sort of a conversation with Apo, which is about the throne format specifically. And we'll make this the last question because I think we've kind of hit a time limit here. With the throne format, one of the key pieces of player feedback from the first major was struggling to kind of stay warm at times. And part of that is due to the kind of setup in terms of having a like green room or whatever, or warm-up rooms that you can use, but also in a grand final, keeping players on stage, not being able to kind of go back and do that sort of thing. Was that a consideration when sort of overhauling the existing grand finals format, introducing the 5th team and having the throne format?
Yeah, and the reason why I think is that, if we only had, let's say, 2v2s that could happen, but then you have, let's say, 6 teams or 8 teams, or, and then they don't get eliminated, they go down to a lower bracket, they play later on, right? That also creates that structural warmth problem. When you have 5 teams left, you can keep 4 teams on stage, do a 1 setup swap or whatever, and then, then you only need 1 or 2 setups potentially there at the Grand Major for teams to stay warm. Now, obviously, they're not playing in those games officially, but, when we take a look at the Grand Major last year and this year, we're trying to do small step improvements wherever we can. And I think that what I'm hoping this year is that we can provide players more opportunities to feel like they're, able to be comfortable, because it's very uncomfortable flying to a different country and playing on stage. But in terms of, the technicalities of it, it is important that teams do stay warm. One of the biggest problems last year for the format was the fact that, if a team had played, they could be not playing for a whole day, right? Like, teams qualified too early. I think it was the Envy roster that qualified too early, as one example of the Grand Major format last year. So, it's a case of trying to find that balance between both, right? How do we keep the viewers engaged? How do we keep the players happy? How do we make sure that we have the infrastructure there to keep players warm, but at the same time, keeping it under the constraints of the finals, and what the finals is played on. I think that, just to kind of summarize this as well, I'm spending your editing time here. I apologize, editing Jerry. I'm sorry, because you added one question I think is really, really, really cool, and I really like this. You asked me, you said, is there a perfect the finals tournament format? And I really like that question. I would answer and say that my punchline is no. I don't think there is a right format for the finals. I think there is a right direction and many wrong directions. The wrong directions are very easy to defend because they look like other esports, but the right direction, I strongly believe, looks like the finals. And I think that if we have this opportunity where we can innovate as we are doing now in the community, if we can do things officiated in the finals esports, we shouldn't constrain ourselves in a box. Instead, we should take those risks and find what works for the community side, what works for the official side, because when the finals released, it was considered innovative. So why don't we also try and consider an innovative, competitive environment for the game too? So
that's so well said. I'm really glad you brought us round to that and hijacked the interview and took the last question when I was ready to wrap it up, because that is so much better than how I did it. So yeah, great.
I love that question, so I had to.
It's a good, yeah. I sort of skipped through a few because I thought we'd covered those, but actually, yeah, really nice to have your very well formed thought there at the end.
And I'm hoping that we can have a good discussion after the promotion format. Maybe there's some things to critique or stuff, and I'm more than open to hearing it. But hopefully it's a positive one. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.